Hello and welcome to Glydecast Podcast. This is episode 5, Combat System with 1H. My name is Shaggy, and with me is 1H.
Hey, what's up?
Alright, so just like the last episode, just have 1H with me this time. Val's on vacation, so we can't have everyone together until the following episode. So we're doing another single short topic, though it's going to get pretty in-depth. So we're going to talk about the combat system in this episode. It's going to be really informative and very interesting. I'm looking forward to this, so we will get to that in a second.
Oh, yeah.
But first off, I just want to go over a couple small things of news. Not a whole lot, but just a little bit right here. Basically, one piece of news is the Primordials have been slowly released. So, landscape and the actual Primordials for each element have been slowly released. The Patreons have been voting on what they want to see next. Every month, Val's releasing one. So they have, how many are out right now? We've got Crystal is the latest release, and we always knew about Nature. Nature was the very first one.
Yes.
I think we're on 3.
Yeah. Pretty sure there's Lysandria, Riona, and Chrysaris. Those are the 2 recent ones, but there was... Actually, no, there's 4, then Pyranor has also been revealed.
Yes, there we go. Yep,
yeah,
fire.
The fire primordial, yes. And Lysandria even has 2 different arts shown.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's the full body one by Clark Campbell.
Oh, that's right. I do remember seeing that one.
Yeah, it's so awesome.
It is. The artwork is amazing. If none of you guys have seen it yet, definitely look it up. It's really, really good. Really well drawn.
Yeah, and there's only going to be more and more and more.
A lot more.
Yeah, for the full game, we're going to have these big boys and girls hopefully moving with animations and all kinds of stuff. It's going to be really interesting to see how the models and such will turn out.
Yeah, and big is not an exaggeration at all.
Oh, no.
Like, they are huge.
Big.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So, next thing is, and this is just very, very small, but it means a lot to me, but I just hit 100 hours on Glyde.
Congrats!
So, I never actually had this much time on any of my games on Steam, because I'm not really a gamer, but this game has just been so much fun. And I know people have asked me, that I've told, they have asked, like, how can you play this for 100 hours? Is there even 100 hours with the content? Like, well, no, but when you're, like, constantly trying to find holes and bugs and glitches and stuff like that to help these guys to be able to fix it, yeah, you can spend hours just scanning different areas and just trying to platform everything.
Every little corner.
Every little square inch, I've been trying to find small things. And I have found a lot of places I shouldn't be. And just small little things.
You have found, like, all the stuff at this point. Almost.
I have... No, not all of it. There's a lot that I have not found that other people found. It's like, wow, I don't know how you found this. And I talked to them, they're like, I just randomly jumped in this one area and I found it. Like, well, that's a good find. But I actually have counted how many holes that actual holes that go into... I call it the back rooms of Glyde. But
yeah, the underworld.
The underworld of Glyde.
Yeah.
I have found 7 so far.
7. Wow. Yeah. You have definitely done your part on any testing and figuring out being overall a very nice quality assurance.
I'm glad I can help out. But even right now, I just found out of a new way to rack up more hours, and that is to learn the different combos, the different combat combos. I've been practicing that, and I've been talking with you about this, and
you're gonna make this one proud.
Holy crap! It's so intense, and it's like I got a lot to learn, because I've just been, I guess you can say, button smashing, but I'm just trying to, like. I know what I'm doing, but I don't know what I'm doing. But there's so many different combos. Let's just say that, and it's really hard to be able to master them.
Yeah, I feel like even with your 100 hours, you kind of get maybe some of the basic ones, but you don't necessarily incorporate them in some general sense. I guess in your what's it called? Yeah, and like your player kit ish. You would have to sit down and actually understand what each move does.
Exactly.
To the different enemy types, for example, to be able to use them for these combos, and yeah, it just gets really deep really quickly.
It does. I mean, you sent me some combos not long ago, like easy, medium, and hard, and you know, I think I was able to do one of the. I did one of the hard ones, but that took me a solid 20 minutes to get, and it wasn't perfect. It wasn't perfect, but I was able to get it. But that was hard. That was so hard. I mean, it was so pleasing. The fact that I was able to finally do it. It wasn't pretty. Yeah. It wasn't clean. It was, but I did it. I actually managed to do it, and it's like, okay, that's cool. I can utilize 3 elements to be able to do this ultimate combo, this really big combo, and it takes out a lot of damage. Actually, it kills the enemy.
That's really nice. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you get it and you feel like you're doing it right, and hopefully those combos I sent would actually be able to just kill a normal enemy, then yeah, it's just it feels so nice when it all executes so well. When it all executes so well together.
Yes, absolutely.
I feel like that's been sort of what was intended with the combat system, is that you could find these sequences and make them your own, even because you have 68 different abilities, so there's a lot to take from. Yeah.
So many.
Oh yeah. I still ask myself every day, how the heck did I make them?
Don't question, they're there.
They're just there. Yeah, they're there and they're nice. But yeah,
they work.
I vaguely remember I had like fall break. I think it was 2020 or something, when COVID was going around and all. In that break, I was just grinding 10 abilities or something in 1 week.
Oh my gosh!
I was like in such a good loop that I'd found like a good working loop to make more and more abilities, and I was just using that and making new stuff for Glyde. I think it was namely the wind element I remember doing there. So yeah, wind element was done, like the basis for it was done in like 1 week roughly. And I also remember one other day where I pretty much did the mage enemy. It was 1 day, and it was only missing one ability, which came later, along with the teleport fix, because the teleportation logic didn't work completely initially.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I feel like I've done some good stuff for this game, and it's really nice to see, you know, how it all works out and how different people interpret and utilize the different elements.
Yeah, because there's people that are testing. There is some people out there that are like legit gamers, and they're coming up with some really good combos there. I'm still figuring it out, but there's some people that are just going ham with it, just knocking it out.
I actually haven't seen anyone do like combos to like
not to your level,
a higher degree. Yeah, no, not on a on a very on the 1,000+ hours level yet. But that also makes sense because it's only been soon half a year of early access. So yeah,
almost 6 months.
Yeah, but I feel like in the future, like what I can do now, I feel like is not going to be much compared to some pro gamers out there going all in. Just, because some people will find this game to be their favorite, and they will also have played Devil May Cry or something like that, and they will just keep going.
Yeah, so let me rephrase that. Like, people that I see that actually have been going ham on it and coming up with combos, they're people that are better than me. Let's just say that. Like, they're not your level, but they are better than me. So they're able to, like a good example is a good friend of mine, Woe, and he is a gamer, and he's able to do more combos than I can figure out, and he's been able to like knock them out pretty quickly, and
using them in his overall gameplay.
Exactly. He knows what he's doing, so he's not just button smashing, he's actually using the combos. So he's much more smoother than I am. I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna spam this button, hopefully it does something.
But hey, now you're slowly moving out of that sort of field, I guess.
I'm trying to get out of that habit and actually like, okay, I'm going to do this, and this. And let's go.
It's kind of like riding a bicycle. You eventually you figure out how turning, how much you need to tilt, how much you need to press on the pedals and stuff like that. So in the same way, you figure out, oh, this move has this, and this utility. Maybe it won't work here, but it combines well with this, and that. And yeah, it's really nice.
Exactly. So that's about it for news, unless you have anything else.
No. I mean, I can say that we're getting closer and closer and closer to the demo being released. I feel like I just need one of the tasks I still have is trying to work out button remapping and making it actually work good, so you can in the game switch controls. Also for keyboard, I know some people really want that, so if I can make it work, that is one of the last remaining things, along with some bug fixing. But yeah, it's right around the corner. I feel it's gonna be really nice.
I do I just thought of one last thing to mention. The language has been cracked.
Oh yeah, there are runes or like rune text in the game, and I think fans have found out how to interpret some of those texts, and it's gonna be interesting to see what people find from these runes, I guess.
Yeah, shout out to TNT Dragon for figuring that out. I hope I don't want to say I helped him. He was figuring out, and there was some that he was kind of explaining to me how to do it, and I actually deciphered a few that he hasn't found, and then he jumped on chat and we started deciphering some others. So it was actually really cool, the fact we could decipher these runes.
Yeah,
it's cool.
It's really cool.
But that didn't take long for people to figure it out, and TNT is the one that figured it out.
Yeah, I'm surprised that even now that it happened before the demo was out, but I guess people really are that into the game, so that's a good sign.
Yeah.
I guess I can also say that some of the ones where you actually can't read them in the game, like where the game doesn't translate with a pop-up box, I probably did those.
Yeah, there was some that we figured out, like, well, some of them actually mentioned you, and like you actually had your signature on it, or your name on it, like one each, one of each somethings. I don't know, I can't remember, but
I think I have a few with the tag on.
Yep. And then there was some that were just random, so random. Of course, you probably know, but it was just so random.
Yeah, not gonna talk about them. So, yes, that's for later. That's for later when the demo's out and we can talk more about the secret stuff. So yeah.
But like mentioned in other episodes, it is not just a random scribble. They actually do mean something, and we have figured it out. Some of us have figured it out.
Interesting, yeah.
Which is really cool. All right, so next thing here, before we get to the main topic, I just want to ask this question. It was requested by a listener. I can't remember who exactly asked, but...
Yep.
1H, how did you get your name?
Oh, no. Well, I used to have another one, which I really don't like anymore. So I kind of renamed, and because I remembered something I could do that is probably pretty rare, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Maybe I could use that as a name. So when I play PlayStation, I can actually play with only my left hand, and it goes, of course, not for every game where you have to also use the camera to turn, but games like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro, I have actually played, I think it was Spyro 2, or... No, it was Crash Bandicoot 3 at least. I completed the game only using my left hand, so that's why I go one-handed, so one-handed shortened is 1H, and that's why I felt that stuck pretty well.
That's insane. I can't. When you told me that, I grabbed the controller and started like, no, I can't do this. What the heck?
No. There's no way. I mean, I can't even do it with my right hand. If I try with my right hand, I just can't. It's like impossible. And I think it's because when I was younger, I would, grab some snacks on Friday evenings and sit down and play Crash or something like that. And then I would have to, snack and eat the snacks at the same time as I was playing. And I guess I just found out that, I can totally play the game with my left hand and eat snacks at the same time. And then I just did that and, beat some levels that weren't extremely hard. And if I replayed one of the games, I would do that again and again. and again. And then, boom, I could just play with my left hand now. I'm probably pretty rusty if I tried to do it right now, but I do think I could actually, beat one of the Crash Bandicoot games like that still, because it's not really a skill that just disappears again, I feel. It's like, I tried, it was Crash Bandicoot 3. I tried that a few years ago, and I hadn't done anything like that since, because I've just been grinding game development on PC, so I haven't had much time. So imagine like three years or something just passing, where I haven't played with my left hand on PlayStation all that much, and then I sit down and do it again, and it just works. I can still do it. But yeah, I did struggle. I did struggle a bit.
That's crazy. I'm actually watching a video of a guy actually doing it with an Xbox controller one-handed, and it's wow.
It's very weird. It's very weird. But I feel like the hardest thing to do is not just pressing all the buttons, but it's actually the right analog stick. It's just very hard to do that and the other buttons at the same time. So anything where I have to turn the camera is probably a no-go, but if it's not, then it should be doable.
That's pretty impressive. It shows what kind of level you're on.
Random skill I just have. Yeah, I'm a pro gamer probably. Something like pro gamer. But I've yet to complete Devil May Cry, one of the games that like really inspired Glyde. I also haven't tried doing it in Glyde yet.
Sounds like a challenge.
Yeah, yet.
Sounds like a streaming challenge.
Yeah, I might just do it like at some point. Could be a fun stream.
You got to do like your stream Glide, but also like get a camera that just faces your hands.
My hand cam.
Yeah. Hand
controller cam. Oh, that would be funny.
That would be awesome. Future TM.
Oh yes, that's a possible stream for the future.
There's so many possibilities for you guys streaming things as this game is being developed.
Oh yeah, I think first and foremost we need Valifor to play Legend of Spyro. That has to happen.
To be honest, as much as I really want to say that he needs to do it right now, I think it should wait until after most of the game has been developed, because I think if he plays it, then he might. No,
I don't think so. No.
You don't think so?
No, he surprisingly, he actually dislikes it a lot, so I don't think he'll, drag anything from it into the full game.
Well, I'm not saying dragging it. Ah, shoot. I'm not saying dragging. I'm not sure he will drag anything from The Legend of Spyro into the game, but I feel like whatever he has set, he might think, oh, it's too close. Let's cut this out because it's too close.
No. I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I don't think it's very different what we're trying to do. Yeah, I can't elaborate, but story, gameplay, everything, it's quite different. And then it just happens to have some overlaps in the, especially gameplay department.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So no worries there.
No, I wouldn't be worried about that.
Sweet. Well, then yes, he needs to play that game like right now.
Yes.
When he gets back
tomorrow, let's go.
Yes.
Let's go. He's still on vacation. So.
He's still on vacation. When he gets back from vacation, all right, day one back, go.
Yes, the
first
first thing
you're taking off work and you're playing Legend of Spyro.
He comes in through the door and he just grabs the controller and starts playing.
Yep. No sleep.
No sleep allowed. No.
Sleep for the week. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah,
all right.
Boy.
So main topic here is we're going to talk about the combat system, and boy, did you go in depth with this.
Yep. So, what you got for me?
All right, so question one. When did you first start working on the combat system?
Oh boy, that's a long time ago now. So we're in 2023 now. And funny enough, tomorrow is the anniversary for Leaf Shift, which is the...
Oh, nice.
The personal project I started on back in 2018. It was my first game, and still is my first game, along with Glyde now at the same time. And, I had to make something to learn how to use Unreal Engine, and that's Operation Leaf Shift kind of comes in here, because I had to make like a combat system for this game. It needed like some very crisp action, something kind of along the lines of Devil May Cry and maybe Smash Brothers, because that's the first thing. I wanted to make something 2D and not 3D, because I had no idea how to work with models, animations, and 3D and all that kind of stuff. So I could do some sprite animation, and that's where it all kind of started. And the combat system as well was something I worked on in the first few months of Operation Leaf Shift. And yes, long story short, in that regard, it came from Leaf Shift, the one in Glyde, and it was adapted because Glyde obviously is 3D and Operation Leaf Shift is a 2.5D action platformer. So something had to give, and yeah. I had an issue at one point with what's called a vector variable. It's like a directional, it's a directional value that was supposed to define how far you would get pushed, essentially. And this thing was going to work with shielding in the game, and because it didn't work, I had to redesign the whole system again. So the combat system has had like probably 2, if not 3, maybe 2.5 different overhauls, just because it's also complex, and there are so many different variables and things to keep track of. So I had to redo the whole system a few times.
I bet that was fun.
That was very fun, but not really. It took like 2 weeks of me just sitting and trying to figure out the logic, because that's the thing. If you Google how to make a combat system, for example, or you find Unreal Engine tutorials, you might get something that works. You might get something that looks cool, but I like to think ahead and have something that persists and can be added onto, and that I fully understand. And I feel like that's what I wanted to do, but I didn't know exactly how, and that's why it took so long just to create this foundation for the gameplay and the action, and especially Operation Leaf Shift, because that's what it was designed for. Though, me being me, I did want to work with 3D games later on, so that's why it works so well with Glyde, probably, because I wanted to design it so I could easily reuse it later, and then it just got to be reused earlier than I had expected when I got on board for Glyde. Yeah,
which wasn't long after that.
No, it was a year and a half after I started working on Leaf Shift, so that's not long, and I hadn't had any experience before that. Oh right, and I had to do another overhaul just for projectiles, because yeah, reflection, deflection is part of the system. So if you like stuff like Star Wars, where you can send a laser bolt right back at the enemy, the system also supports that, and that had to work in 3D, and also had to work with applying the correct variables for complex functions like knockback and such. I think it was mainly the knockback that was a problem, but it was mostly in Leaf Shift. The actual transition or adaptation into the 3D environment worked really, really smoothly, like surprisingly smoothly. I can't really explain just how surprised I was when I saw it working in Glyde, and Glyde could, dash into enemies while on fire and striking them and knocking them away and stuff like that. It went from nothing like that and then into suddenly having different special moves and elements doing all kinds of different things to enemies, and also Glyde taking damage and such, and reacting to it. Whew. Yeah, it's deep, and I'll probably go into more detail and some more specifics for some of the later questions, but this is a start at least.
Wow.
Yeah.
Way to start off with the first question there.
Yeah. Whew, yeah.
All right, and it just gets deeper after that.
Yeah, I'll try and make it, digestible for people, but it is very complicated stuff.
All right, so question number 2. The combat system you developed is inspired by a bunch of other games. Can you explain what games inspired you and how you continue to create this system?
Right. So, for Operation Leaf Shift, there was Smash Brothers, because you see it from the side. You only have knockback on the x-axis and the y-axis, if you know what a coordinate system is. You can Google that if you don't. But basically, left and right, up and down, and that was, I wanted something where you could attack quickly, you could shield, you could become invincible, you could also organize abilities in different categories and give them different hitboxes. And if you for some reason wanted to, like, as a developer, to change the hitboxes on a move, I wanted it to be very easy to do so. So in principle, every enemy or every character in the game I wanted to make should be able to use pretty much any hitbox in the game. And that goes true for Glyde as well. And that's why it has been very, very, very awesome to work with this system and just keep making more and more and more. So yeah, Smash Brothers was one of the primary inspirations, and then obviously Devil May Cry, because you have juggles and stuff like that. You have air combos, you have parries and counters and stuff like that. You also have these things in Smash, but I specifically wanted them to be very free flow and very, very snappy and quick in a sense. So I looked more to Devil May Cry and tried to imagine how that would work in 2D for Leaf Shift, and then because of that, it also translated right back into 3D, where the Devil May Cry inspiration kind of came from in the first place. Although there was one major thing that the system couldn't really handle, and that is because I couldn't figure out how to, code grabs. So when you grab another character in a game, your character has to, interact with the other character and force them into a specific animation that lines up well with, for example, you grab them and move them over the character grabs an enemy and moves them over their head and then drops them down on the ground or something. That's like 2 different animations that have to play in sync, and just trying to, set it up in a dynamic way, I couldn't. My brain just couldn't. So the system didn't support that. But that's also something that I think could be implemented later on in the system.
Yeah, I can see how that could be very challenging, because you're dealing with so many different factors at once.
And especially because I wanted to make it work for a 2D game first, 2.5D, and then later on have it work in 3D. So I was working with pixel art and sprite animations, and they just don't do that in the same way as 3D models do, where you can attach objects to limbs or bones on the meshes and stuff like that. So yeah, that was just impossible to do. For Operation Leaf Shift, at least that I knew at that point. I might have found a cheat code for it, but it's still rather finicky, and I was feeling that it could very easily bug out and be annoying to work with. So I tried to make a game where you have fast, snappy combat, but you don't have grabs. Or if you have grabs, it's like a pseudo grab, where the enemy gets locked in place or follows a specific point very neatly, but it's not part of like a synchronized animation dance between 2 characters, as it usually tends to be in modern games.
It's not, yeah, it's more jagged, right? More where it just like teleports to one area so we can begin the animation.
Yeah, something like that. I wanted a solution where you could do something similar to grabs, but they're not true grabs. And Glyde, in his regular form, he has a bite move called Fire Fang, and it kind of works like a grab. If you hit an enemy, then the second part of the move triggers, because if you just use it in the air, then the grab doesn't connect. So in that sense, Glyde does have a pseudo grab, but it isn't a true grab like what one might imagine from, for example, Spyro Dawn of the Dragon.
Yes, I was just about to get there. Yep.
Yes. That's something I was thinking about when working on Glyde, and I was being a little sad that I couldn't do something like that with the system. But
that would have been awesome if you were able to like get that to work, because that was a very unique feature in that game. But
yes,
of course, the way you have it implemented now is great on its own, and it's original. Where that would have it would have looked more like you copied it from Spyro.
Actually, yes, it's both that I didn't want to get it all too close to Dawn of the Dragon, and when we did design talks, about how Glyde should work, from a functional perspective and what moves Glyde should have, we just didn't think about having grabs being like an overall thing Glyde could do. We wanted to focus more on the elemental moves, and I don't actually know. I don't recall if we discussed that some of these moves should be grabs or not. But in either case, I couldn't do it with the state of the system at that point. Though it doesn't mean that Glyde can't have grabs in the full game. That's the thing. That's something that could be developed on later on. But
could be done.
As you said, the system and the fact that it might have been too close to Dawn of the Dragon made at least me personally not want to go in that direction. Plus, I felt like if we wanted to do some kind of grab move, it wouldn't be a very complex one, because we don't have the animation resources to make it look like really, really awesome. And for that reason, we didn't, at least I didn't think it would be nice to have weird looking grabs. If that makes sense. Yeah,
it does.
Phew. Yeah. So in the too long didn't read version is that the system didn't support grabs, and I since then haven't been able to make it work super smoothly. But at the same time, it doesn't stop the system and combat in general from being snappy and fun and Devil May Cry-esque in that sense. Because when you think about it, when you play Devil May Cry, you're not grabbing enemies all that often either. So the gameplay loop is already kind of removed from a grab-heavy focus, I would say. But at the same time, we can still always work more on it, and I really want to have grabs be possible and very easily, very easily added to any game that this system is a part of, I would say.
That's cool. That'd be cool to see that in the future.
Yeah.
At least some kind of grab.
It would be cool to see Glyde grab and throw an enemy. Like, just thinking about it. But how and...
Just yeet it across the field.
Yeah, just yeet!
Yep. or just something simple as, like, for the smaller ones, just grabbing it and throwing it in the air where you can now jump and do a aerial combo.
Yes, something like that where you have a throw move, or you can throw one enemy into another, something like that.
I can see that being very challenging to be able to get the animations right on that, where especially the collision where one impacts the other and how it reacts to that.
Yeah, it's the whole collision thing, and then the rules with how, if you grab an enemy and you do like a finishing move on them, like you throw them over your head and slam them into the ground or something like that. And then what happens when another enemy either attacks you or pushes you off an edge, for example? Does the grab just get cancelled? Are you unable to be pushed? Are you invincible during the grab? All of these things also have to be thought about when designing a grab feature or mechanic. And then, again, just saying grab mechanic, grabs generally mean more like multiple animations and multiple different enemies that can be grabbed. And if we want to support a very nice grab system for the combat system, we also need to code all these different enemies and have them work with grab in that sense, and we also need to know what we want with the grab. I think
Right.
that's the most important thing. And here for the Glyde demo, I don't necessarily feel like we wanted anything big with grabs, and I also feel that the combat already feels very solid without grabs. I think that's the easy way to kind of explain why it is how it is now, at least.
Okay. Yeah.
But in the future, it could be cool. I agree.
Yeah, it would.
If we get it to work like really really cleanly, that's almost a must at this point.
Right. So much for the future and the
Yeah.
full game.
Yeah, the full game is gonna be really 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 nice to explore, and just getting the system to a new height even at this point, or reworking it. It might be that we just rework it from scratch. But
Oh,
we'll
gosh.
see. We'll see. Yeah, that's programming in a nutshell. Yeah, we'll see. I mentioned having like a foundation for fast and snappy combat, and a lot of this is rooted in this idea I had where I would separate moves kind of similarly to how fighting games do them. Because in fighting games you usually have what's called normals, specials, and supers. Then I just added one more category of attack or ability into the mix called uniques. So like unique moves that aren't specials and aren't supers. It's a bit weird, but you have 4 different categories, so to say. And this kind of balance is the foundation for how combat flows in the game. So you use your normals, and you can combine them with uniques and maybe specials, with the rare occasion of using supers to finish your combos or just devastating enemies. So it's kind of like how often these moves are being used. And Glyde is a little bit different from Leaf Shift in that sense, where Leaf Shift is very, very much about the normals, where Glyde seems to be focused more on the specials. A normal would be, for example, the light attack combo or the heavy attack combo. And then a unique in Glyde, like a unique move would be the Firebolt and Breath button, which on PlayStation is the circle button. And then you have the special moves on L1 and one of the attack buttons, and supers being the ultimates. Compared to Leaf Shift, you also have normals, and then uniques is in the Flame Breath or something like that. In that game, it's more like a tool button where you can switch different tools, and then you have special moves and supers instead of ultimates. But it's a similar setup. You have 4 different categories, and you use normals more than you use the others for the most part. Though Glyde breaks that by being special focused. And then this foundation also was very focused on the idea of having multi-hit abilities. I think you Shaggy, you're pretty familiar with Volcanic Wrath and
Yes.
Electric Field from the game.
Yes.
These moves, they have this thing, aside from just dealing damage and being useful for comboing, they kind of pull enemies, and that pulling action is something that was very, I would say, very intrinsic to the system as well, that you can drag enemies around, but not as a grab, but as several different hits, belonging to just one ability. So yeah, multi-hitting moves are very, very common in fighting games, especially Marvel vs. Capcom. So that's also a reference or an inspiration for this system. And yeah, you also have Smash Brothers, where you have multi-hitting neutral airs and jabs, rapid jabs, like where you kind of go ora 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 ora, if you have watched JoJo or something like that. But you attack multiple times. That's the thing that the system really needed to have. And the same with projectiles, the ability to shoot many projectiles, the ability to reflect them all back at the attackers. Yeah.
All right.
Yes, I think I could keep going. It's all so interesting. I think to work with and yeah.
All right. So next question is combos. So what are some basic combos in the game that are good for new players to play around with? Basically, me.
Yeah. So what have you been playing around with in the game, Shaggy? Like in terms of the elements and what abilities are your favorites?
So, like favorite abilities is kind of weird to say because like I like electricity, but I don't use electricity as much as I use fire. But I don't use fire as much as I found out that nature is a good combo. You can do a bunch of good combos there. I do not remember the names whatsoever to the combos, but like I found that nature is actually really good. You can do a combo there. I don't really alter between elements. I don't switch that much. So, which I am learning to do because you've sent me a couple that actually will utilize water and electricity or fire and electricity or different ones like that.
Yes.
Because they all are very, very unique. So, I mean, I've been leaning more towards either fire or nature, but also crystal is also another really, really good one as well.
Okay, yeah. So you have you usually play around with nature for the most part.
That's
right?
what I've been doing now that I found out that there's a really good combo you can do, especially on the swordsman. Let's just say that nature for swordsman.
Yeah,
because I found a way to really take them out. But
yeah,
fire and electricity is mainly my common go-to for other enemies.
Okay, yeah, I feel like that's like a common thing I hear. Very common. Is that fire and lightning just play well together, and I think the reason for that is exactly basic combos. So fire element has this move called Volcanic Wrath, and for some reason it has been the almost end-all be-all move of just combo starter stuff and also platforming. And I remember when I did the move, I was like, oh no, this move is going to be used for everything. Yep. And so it actually, I think it used to be a little stronger than it is now, but because it is so versatile, I would say it's still one of the best moves in the game. And this move is very good for basic combos because you walk up to an enemy, you do light attack, maybe 1 or 2 hits, and then you use Volcanic Wrath, and boom, you and the enemy are both in the air. And then from there, you can use L1 and circle on PlayStation controller and do Blazing Impact. I would say that is a very solid beginner combo. I don't know, have you tried that one? So, light attack, Volcanic Wrath, Blazing Impact.
Yes. Oh, that's a very common one, yeah.
Yes, I would say that...
Very, very basic, very common, very easy to use, very effective.
Yes, and for lightning element, you can do something a little similar, but it feels different when you actually do it. It's light attack, because the last hit of light attack actually launches an enemy up. So you do that, you do the light attack combo and let the 4th hit strike the enemy, and then the enemy goes up. Then you can jump and do electric field and then zap dash.
So what you're saying is light. So you do light attack, light attack, light attack, light attack. Yeah. Enemy gets launched up, and then you do electric field and zap dash.
You jump.
Oh, you jump.
You jump up to the enemy. Yeah, you jump up to the enemy, and then you do electric field, and that should combo into zap dash.
Yeah, that's another good basic one.
Yeah, I would say those two. And what was it? I mean, yes, water slide. It was water slide. Water slide is very fun. I really like water slide and how it just ended up becoming this move that combos into itself. Although it has the disadvantage of dealing quite low damage. But that's another basic combo. If you unlock the water element and you target a zombie or a snapper or an archer even, you can just do water slide and then water slide, and then can you guess what the next move is?
Water slide?
Water slide. Yes, and I think what should happen is that you slide into the enemy, and then if you don't hold down the button, Glyde hits the enemy and bounces up, and the enemy also goes up. If you then do it again, then Glyde tries to dive forward, but dives into the enemy and bounces up again if you're not holding the button. Because when you hold the button for water slide, Glyde will go through the enemy. That's a small little mechanic I added to the move. But yeah, and then you're in the air, and if you try to do water slide again, I made it so you can't just keep bouncing off of the enemy with water slide. So when you do the second one in the air, Glyde will dive forward, and the enemy will follow suit by kind of being dragged down. And both Glyde and the enemy will kind of splash on the ground with like a watery explosion.
All right.
So water slide, water slide, water slide, and you get some watery action and some decent damage on a single enemy.
Yeah. So here's another good combo here. I'm just gonna. I don't know the names because it doesn't say it, because it only says on ground attacks. But it's not.
Yeah, I can I can tell you the names. We still need to do the move list. Yes, so that is what Shaggy just did was he switched to nature, then he jumped and used Lycentria's Blessing while in the air, and then Field of Thorns while in the air. And those two moves actually name something different, but we don't have it displayed in the game yet. When you do a move where it has like a winged symbol on the right side in the game UI, like all to the right of the screen, it means that it has an aerial variant, or doing the ability in the air means it'll do something different.
That's what that means.
Yes, that is what it means. Yes.
Yeah, because.
And even Zapdash has it, and that's because when you use Zapdash in the air, I actually dubbed it Blitzer, because it kind of blitzes the enemy and keeps it in place for a little while, like a speed blitz. Yeah, so you jump and you do Lycentria's Blessing in the air. That is called Emerald Solace, is what the move is called. And then you do Field of Thorns in the air, and that one is called Razor Blade. So jump, Emerald Solace, Razor Blade is also a pretty good combo. And you can actually follow up, because the enemy is stuck there for a while, so you could switch to fire and do Blazing Impact while the enemy is stuck by the Razor Blade. If you can afford it, but right now I see Shaggy is a little low on energy.
Do it again.
By the way, for people going into the training room and wanting to test the same combo over and over, you can hit, if you press both analog stick buttons, you can reset the arena, so you always teleport back to the center. Or you can press T on the keyboard. Oh yeah, we also need to, I know that, I've also heard it from, I think it was Featherhoof Gaming, doing YouTube videos of Glyde. Rumble. we need an option to disable Rumble.
So those are good. Those are good basic combos there for new players that like me.
Yes, and I can encourage using the reset function. So every time you mess up your combo, you just press T on the keyboard. If you are on PC, which is going to be the case for most people until we go console in the distant future. But that, or hitting both analog sticks. So L3 and R3 on PlayStation, and left and right thumbstick button on Xbox, I think it's called.
Or you're just gonna have to use T, like me, who actually disabled that button because it kept on, I remapped the button because I kept on pushing down on it and deactivating the lock on
elements. The lock on even.
Yep. So I did it for R1. So R1 is my deactivation for lock on.
Yeah, you just hold.
I'm sorry,
R1.
I'm wrong there. No, I was changing back to normal Glyde. That's what it was.
Okay.
Because that is, it's is it the R3?
Yeah, that's switching back to base form is L3.
L3. So I switched it to R1. I remapped it to R1 because I kept on doing that in game. Apparently, I press down when I'm tensing up.
When you just okay. But I think I've seen that happen before, even at playtests, like physical playtests.
A couple. I had to show that.
Sometimes I've been going to my university and showing off Glyde, and people there playtesting sometimes would also, hold very tightly on the controller and turn back to base form. So that's just a thing, apparently. I didn't know that.
Yes, I've actually, if some of the people that have played, they complained the exact same thing, and I said, all right, and I walked them through how to remap their controller to that, because it's not just me, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a shame. But I honestly didn't know that it was, like, many people pressing that hard on the analog stick. But then now we know. But that's also what the button remapping is going to be for.
Yes, and that's a great tool through Steam to be able to do that.
Yes, indeed. Hopefully I can get it to work smoothly in the game, so you don't have to. Yeah.
That'd be cool. All right, next question here. Question 4.
Yeah.
How does the style rank work, and what prevents you from climbing up the ranks even if you're attacking the enemies?
Right, so the style rank is right out of Devil May Cry at this point, and when I talked to Velafor, he mentioned that he wanted it to be different from Devil May Cry, and I think we also managed to make it just a little different. In Devil May Cry, it shows, it kind of describes how well you're playing, but I would say in many cases it's very exaggerated. If you use a very powerful move, it just instantly goes very high up, unless you keep spamming it. And in Glyde, I actually made a negative multiplier on ultimates. So even while using an ultimate is very stylish, it won't net you like the biggest style rank immediately just because you hit a bunch of enemies. At least not most of the time. But yeah, we've been talking about giving the player some kind of reward for getting a high rank. We might do that in the full game, but I think in the demo it's just going to be visual feedback, kind of telling you how well you're playing the game at the moment and how your situation versus the enemies generally is. So if your rank is only Dragon or Sentinel at all times, it kind of tells you that maybe you can do a little more to the enemies. You can kind of you're being too easy on them.
Being too repetitive with your motions, with your attacks.
Yes, you can go a bit more creative on your play style.
It's a creativity tool, pretty much.
Yes, that's a very good way to describe it.
Got to mix it up with the elements. Got to mix it up with your moves.
Yes. Yeah, just generally try and use different abilities and don't spam the same ones if you want to get a high rank. Because you have 68 abilities, there's a reason to use them. I would recommend switching it up a little bit.
And this right here actually took not only me, but there was a lot of other people on that have been wondering. It's like, I can't get any higher than Sentinel or Ancient or something like that. It's like I can't get any higher. I'm defeating them all, but I just can't get any higher. And it took me a while. I talked to you many times about this. Why can't I get any higher when I see you getting godlike all the time? It's like, how am I? Why am I? I'm defeating the same amount of enemies. Why am I not getting any higher? And that's exactly why. Because I'm doing one element, the same 3 moves. No, the same 3 moves. That's it. But once you start changing elements and you can use the same element, but just go, just use different abilities, or you
just mix them up, because even if you only have, like, sometimes people might think, oh, but I'm in fire element, I only have 3 specials: light attack, I think grounded light attack and aerial light. The grounded and aerial combos, when you just do the normal light and heavy combos, they also are calculated as being different moves. So if you combine ground combos, aerial combos, the 3 different specials, and your fire, bolt, and breath moves, that's quite a lot, and you should be able to grow your rank just with that in one element. But if you just swap between 2 elements, you're pretty much gonna be set up for getting the godlike rank if you just don't take damage, which is another thing. So the style rank system is trying to tell you that there is like a way to get way better with the different moves and using them, and also avoiding damage. And if you're doing all of that right, you're godlike. That's kind of, I think that's my interpretation of how the combo system is meant to work, and I think it works pretty well for the most part. As it's kind of like an anti-spam thing, even though it's not a mechanic that gives you disadvantages for spamming. Like, it doesn't make your moves weaker, which is actually a thing I did implement in Operation Leaf Shift. If you spam in Leaf Shift, where the combat system originates from, your each ability actually deals less damage. But I talked with Valifor about that particular thing, and he wanted to instead have so each move in Glyde at least deals the same damage, so people wouldn't get confused, which is understandable. But yeah, it's a visual thing, and you do get bonuses from just being cool and using your 68 moves creatively. And there are also tiny bonuses for doing cancels. So if you're using a special move, for example, and you do a dash, you can cancel certain special moves like Volcanic Wrath with your dash, and it actually gives you a little extra points for that. It's like, oh cool, you know how to dash cancel. That's pretty advanced. And then that's another way of kind of climbing up the style ranks if you want to look cool in front of your friends.
I try and I fail.
It also counts for parries. So Earth Element has this move called Seismic Revenge, which is completely free of energy cost. It's the only big drawback of the move is that it has quite a lot of end lag. If you use it and you don't get a parry, you're left vulnerable for like a moment. But yeah, if you do get a parry, and if you also cancel the animation of the parry by dashing or jumping after getting a successful parry, the style rank system will actually tell you, whoa, that's pretty cool, here's some more points. So it goes up quite a bit deep, and it does take into account if you're fighting like a whole horde of enemies and you're just spamming the same area of effect moves. Like, no, you need to be more creative.
I love that dynamic feature in the game where it's so open. Like, there's so many possibilities to be able to do this, and there's so many ways to learn and be able to combine all these different combos.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you can use just 2 different elements, and I'm pretty sure you can get the highest rank if you're just playing well, and you're and you get to understand like what it means to dash cancel and parry the enemy abilities and stuff like that. But yeah, overall, the style rank system tries to just tell you, how well are you playing the game. And for those swordsmen, I mean, if you're just stunning them with those nature moves, I guess you're playing pretty well if they can't touch you.
Yeah, I actually did a lot of that with the 1 HP challenge.
And cool.
So, I mean, I would get hit maybe 50% of the time and die, but 50% of the time I was able to clear all 5 of them out, because I did that in the training room with all 5.
Oh, nice.
Clear all 5 out with just nature, using those abilities and a couple heavy and light attacks, and getting godlike, and not getting hit.
Awesome. That's cool. So you're starting to really get it there with the combat.
I'm starting to.
Yeah.
Give me another 6 months and I might actually improve a little bit more.
Oh yeah. But yeah, Razor Blade is really good against swordsmen. Maybe a little too much.
Yeah, I might need to debuff that a little bit, but I mean, still works. I like it.
Yeah, it is a good move, and I also feel that nature element is one of the most tight elements that you can use. But I guess that goes for all of them at this point, because, yeah, balancing and stuff.
Alright, ready for the next question?
Yep.
Alright. So it sounds like there's a skill floor and ceiling where players get better and better over time. Do you think you've hit that skill ceiling?
No. I feel like there's a lot more to learn with the different moves, and even I feel like I'm just scratching the surface in one way or another. I haven't hit the ceiling yet, but I'm way past like average gameplay from people who pick up the game, play it for like 2 to 10 hours maybe, and then maybe not play it again. I'm way past that because I've had like many thousands of hours probably in the training room just testing the different abilities. I can also very confidently switch to every element, so even the ones on the second wheel, crystal, wind, water, and earth, yes. Normally when I play, I have made it a habit to just try and parry stuff, and that comes from Operation Leaf Shift, where I also have a parry on a similar button input. It's also on circle on a PlayStation controller. So yeah, it's kind of a habit, and that also comes from Devil May Cry, where you can switch to Royal Guard as Dante and use like a parry. So there is like that inspiration, I feel, has done a lot to my playstyle, and also just how I kind of play the game in both Leaf Shift and Glyde, for that matter. And it's fun. I feel it's very, very fun to just go around, throw all the different abilities out, and try to do some very creative combos. And then in between, if some enemy is trying to flank me or catch me from behind or off the screen, I actually try to go for a parry more often than not, which in some cases is not a good idea, because you have that 1H challenge, the 1
Yes.
HP challenge, where you can't get hit even once. So doing an arena battle with 19 waves and not messing up your parry just once, that's very difficult. Yeah. So that's why my playstyle just isn't very meant for that challenge. Instead of going for a parry, I have to somehow mentally force myself to go and use Water Shield, or Oceanic Shield, it's
Right.
called. And I just don't do that. That's not me. That's somebody else. I love to just try and parry and then get a very, very good punish. I think this also comes from my fighting game days, because I used to play Smash Brothers competitively, so I have some habit of trying to get a perfect shield and then get a punish, because I think some people might know, but I'm a Greninja main.
Yeah, just watching you play that arena with how many were you? 17 is what you made it to?
15 was my record.
15 your record. Okay, I thought it was higher,
15 out of 19.
Yeah,
I think that was pretty good. Yeah, I got to wave 14, and then I died again. Yeah, I think
One day you'll get it.
But it's also very hard. Like it's the middle arena, and there are going to be 3 bonus arenas where you can test out all of your combat needs and challenge yourself to see if you can beat even the hardest of battles. It's going to be very awesome when the last one goes public. I wonder if you and especially Woen will just get it in like the first day or something like that. Because it's so hard. It's so hard that I'm struggling with it, and I think that was the intended thing. I remember Valifor being like, "Don't you think it might be a little too hard?" and I was like, "No, where's the fun if it's like a developer battle arena and it's easy for us?" Yeah, I wouldn't say that. So yeah, I tried to make that arena so difficult that I can just only barely beat it, while not going for cheese, but like playing normally at least. So I think you might actually be able to beat it, but it's crazy. Like I think there's one wave in that arena where there are like 5 mages at once. It is on Velafor's stream where he played it, and I think I changed the arena a little bit now that the Blight Guardian has gone public info. I can talk about that as well. I think I might have done a wave where you have to fight 2 of them at once.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
You're evil.
That one, that wave is very, very fun. Because it works very well if you're playing at a high level. But it's hard. It's pretty hard even for me.
Good gosh.
But hey, no promises, no promises. It might still in development, so some stuff in the hardest arena challenge might change, but
it might get even harder. Who knows?
It might get even harder. It might be 3 Blight Guardians at the same time. Who knows,
dude? Just go ham. Put 5.
Yeah, 5. I actually haven't. I literally haven't tried more than 2. I think. I tried 3 once in the training room when I was bored. And I wanted to see what is it like fighting 3 Blight Guardians, and oh boy. Yeah.
Game, set, match.
Yeah, you have to be very, very attentive, because if one of them pops the immobilize move, then you have to just rush to them immediately. You also have to go for a lot of stuns, because when you stun these heavy enemies, they actually drop a little bit of soul. And that charges your ultimate meter, so if you can get a lot of stuns on them, you can get an ultimate again, which you might need if they start using immobilize. Like all three of them use immobilize at the same time, then you're screwed if you don't have an ultimate.
Just hope they don't hit you or anything during that period of time while you're out.
No, they will hit you if you let them charge immobilize. That's the thing.
Oh, no, don't. No, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. I do, but I don't. I want to see you do it, but I don't want to do it. Anyway.
I don't know what it's going to be in the final demo, but I think it's going to be fun either way when people start, getting really good with the combat, and they have this very insane challenge, and they just, this one time, they complete it, and they're just going to feel super satisfied getting the W.
Yep. I'm ready to see the speed players,
Oh, the speedrunners! Oh my gosh! Yeah, I wonder what the speedrunning strat actually is, because in Operation Leaf Shift, as I mentioned earlier, I made the style rank system. So actually, there's no visual indicator yet, but there is like a background system check where it checks if you're spamming the same move, and if you are, then it reduces the damage of that move. So in many games you see with speedrunners, they will try to use the most damaging move just repeatedly to kill all the enemies as fast as possible. And that is also true for Devil May Cry. I'm pretty sure that all of your moves in Devil May Cry always will deal the same damage. So you can just spam Stinger and kill all the enemies, and then if you don't get a high rank, whatever, if you're doing any percent at least. So yeah, I wonder what the best strategy actually is in Glyde. What speedrunners will find for combat arenas, or if you in the demo level, if they'll just skip past all the battle arenas. I don't know.
Just find a door randomly at the very side and they go through it, and then game, you completed it. All the enemies die. Yeah. Then you just win.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea what speedrunners will actually be doing, and I'm very excited to find out when we get there. It's gonna be fun.
Awesome. Very awesome. All right. Yeah. Question 6 now. You mentioned the Glide Combat Foundation based on Leaf Shift's 2.5D system. Can you elaborate that a bit?
Okay, yeah, so here comes the tiny nitty-gritty details on why it works like it does, this combat system. And I won't go into the actual code, but I'll talk about just what is actually being considered when you hit, for example, an enemy, or an enemy hits you. So I talked about earlier that I wanted this snappy fast-paced action experience. But what does that actually mean? Like, what parameters do you actually need for this snappiness and making it feel satisfying to hit an enemy? And obviously there has to be some damage that has to be dealt. So you have damage and you have stun damage in both Operation Leaf Shift and Glyde. And stun damage, especially, also damage, they those two together kind of determine for how long an enemy can't react. Like when you hit an enemy, there's in this get hit animation basically. But even if they're not in that animation, there might be a tiny period before they can act again after taking damage. And in Leaf Shift, it's associated with like a stunned animation or something like that. So there's that, and then there's this term called hit lag, which is the stopping period. It's a very specific thing now we're talking about. But when you hit an enemy in Glyde, haven't you noticed that you just freeze for a very short moment or something like that?
Yes.
Yes, that is called hit lag or hit stop, and it's a very, very fighting game mechanic thing. It's something that was actually missing, I think, in The Legend of Spyro, at least the first 2 games. Or it was very, very weak, where Spyro wouldn't really stop when hitting an enemy, which made it feel a little bit weird, I think. I think I'm really unsure now if they actually have it in Dawn of the Dragon, or if it's just me hallucinating. But yeah, this hit lag thing is what makes it feel very satisfying most of the time, when there's just like a very brief freeze of the action to kind of highlight what you're doing and how you just hit an enemy. Especially moves like Blazing Impact and Glyde, they have extra hit lag to make it feel even more heavy when they hit an enemy. And you have probably also tried using Stone Cleaver in Earth Element.
Yep.
And getting Seismic Revenge, getting a counter. There's also extra hit lag on those moves, on the hitboxes when you parry for Seismic Revenge. There's actually artificial hit lag introduced, so Glyde freezes, and also the enemy freezes when they strike you, just for a moment. And that is a very specific thing used in fighting games, and you will probably also realize that being a thing if you have played Smash Brothers and tried to strike Marth while he's doing a counter. So there are some very intrinsic features in the combat system that all kind of helps making it feel cohesive and impactful when you strike an enemy. Then there's hit stun, and yeah, that's I think I already mentioned that damage and stun damage, they add towards hit stun, like how long the enemy is unable to act. And some more powerful moves in Glyde might make the hit stun last longer on enemies. It's an invisible mechanic that you actually can't really see. But if you have played against a mage and hit it with Blazing Impact, it's gonna take longer for it to recover the shield than if you just hit it with the light attack just once. If you just slap the enemy like with a claw light attack, it's gonna recover faster. So that is like some of the invisible stuff behind the scenes going on in the system. Then there is damage type, and that is a parameter that is also very associated with the elemental stuff in the game. I won't go too much into detail how it's used, but basically if you hit an explosive crate in a game, it might not blow up immediately. In some games it will, but in games like Operation Leaf Shift and Glyde, there's actually an associated fire damage type, for example, for fire element. So if you strike something that is explosive, it will explode immediately if it's being hit by fire damage. And it's also a way for us as developers to kind of check from the enemy's point of view. What are they getting hit with? Are they being hit by an ice type move, an earth type move, fire type move? It's kind of like Pokemon where you have these elemental weaknesses. So you can do multipliers. For example, if you have the fire mage has a shield that's like a fire shield. If you strike it with water or ice, it'll actually take more damage than normal. So there are these damage type weaknesses. Some people might have asked, what about elemental weaknesses and all of that? Like, is it super effective? And will you have to use ice element versus all of the fire enemies? And from a design perspective, going into this combat system, I made this decision already back when I started working on Operation Leaf Shift that no, I don't want the player to have to resort to only one specific moveset or one or a few different abilities to defeat their enemies. I want them to be able to use as many different moves as they possibly can. Though, I also want this strategy element that, sure, if you use ice or water on fire, it might be a little bit more effective, but it isn't the end-all, be-all.
Okay. Yeah.
I think there are two cases in Glyde right now where you might notice that damage type and also status effect like burn is significantly weaker, and that is indeed the fire mage and also the golem enemy.
I was just about to get to that. Yep. I was about to ask that question.
If you strike the fire mage's shield with a fire move, you'll notice it'll deal very little damage to the shield. So that's one instance where you're kind of locked out of one option, but it's one out of, well, 8 different elements, so I wasn't feeling like, oh, we are forcing the player to play in a specific way. You have so many other tools to deal with the fire mage's shield. As the combat designer, I just wanted that one element to feel like fire element is very, very strong, but if you're fighting fire with fire, you're not gonna get as far as if you play a little bit more creatively. And hey, fire element also needed some weaknesses, right? Because it's a very, very good element already.
Right, and that's good that you still allow it to do damage, but you're going to do much more if you use more counteractive elements.
Yes, elements. I think I'm just generally a person who really likes to land in between the absolutes. So I didn't want like a huge multiplier where doing water damage to a mage would just kill it instantly, but I also didn't want it to be completely immune to fire damage. So you can kind of land in between and still deal damage with fire, but it's not going to feel as if it's very useful. So it's like encouragement and discouragement is something I like to focus on a lot when designing the combat in games. More so than just throwing in absolutes like this enemy is immune. You can only hit this enemy with ice damage. I think that's generally kind of boring unless you're doing a strategy game where that is the purpose of the game, is that you need to have the right tools. But in a game where you can swap between 68 elemental abilities on the fly, I mean, I kind of want the players to be able to do that and feel like they're getting something out of it.
Yeah, of course.
And I feel like they do with the current setup of things. Right, I mentioned the golem enemy. The golem, because it's very, very easy to time parries against it, it actually takes less damage from Seismic Revenge than all the other enemies in the game. I think.
Because you can see it coming, so it's you don't have to revert quickly.
Yeah, when I designed the enemy, I was like, okay, can I just parry this guy to death? And yes, you can, and you could, and it was very, very easy. Like, it just died in 7 or 8 parries or something.
Oh,
it was
that's very quick.
Yeah, that was very quick because it did full damage, and the golem hits pretty hard. And the way the counter works is, again, a bit like Smash Brothers, where Glyde parries the incoming move and then counters, and the counter deals more damage depending on how strong the receiving attack was. So if the counter did full damage against the golem, you could just parry a few times and then beat him. I thought that was a little too boring, so I added, yeah. I thought it was a good idea to make Seismic Revenge not insanely good against those guys. But hey, you can still parry them. And parrying also will restore a little bit of your flame bar, which is another, you know, another incentive to use parrying is that you can get back lost energy way faster than just going for melee attacks. Yeah.
That's a lot of information.
That is a lot of information. I tried to boil it down as much as I could.
Well, yeah, but it shows that you guys thought about this. You're not just throwing it together. You guys take the time to actually think, plan ahead and think things through.
Yeah. I think we both, Velafor and I, wanted to make sure that it was like a cohesive experience. It was going to be a game where you can express yourself and not just following a set path in combat. Like you don't have to use this move, then this move, then this move, and that's the way to go. You can mix and match as you want, and the enemies won't stop you from mixing the different elemental abilities. Some enemies might make it a little more difficult to use certain elements, like the Fire Mage and Fire Element, not going all that well together, but you're still free to use 7 other elements and, combo and whack all the enemies as much as you like. And yeah, I think to make all of this work, you have to kind of go deep, and you have to think about every little detail that goes into every different interaction. And then because you have so many different interactions, we can't account for all of them. So people might find bugs still, and I mean, that goes for every game, right? At this point, especially when they're so complex. But overall, I feel like the combat system is very, very solid now. And I think that's also something Patreons and people who've played like with early access so far have been saying as well.
For sure.
And I also don't feel like there is a distinctly best element, even if Velafor and I talked about Crystal Element being the best because it's unique in a way.
It's unique and it is very powerful. I will.
It is very powerful.
But,
yeah. But at the same time, I feel yeah. a small thing I want to say just about that is that Crystal Element is powerful, but it isn't the best defensive element as well. You don't have any iframes. You don't have any invincibility. And when I say iframes, I mean, yeah, when games run at, for example, 60 FPS, 60 frames per second,
yep.
And iframes just refers to individual frames or like a set duration where you happen to be invincible. And Crystal Element, fortunately, does not have that, because if it did, it would very much be the best element in the game, like hands down.
So that's how you balanced it then?
That's how it's being balanced, yeah. It doesn't have a move like Volcanic Wrath or Blazing Impact where you can just press the button and you go invincible for a moment. Because Volcanic Wrath actually does have a few iframes on startup. It's inspired by the Shoryuken from fighting games. the Dragon Punch. So you have Glyde doing a Dragon Punch. The dragon does the Dragon Punch kind of move, yeah. And Blazing Impact just has invincibility, I think, throughout almost the whole move. And that's like those things as well. They're like they're things that you really have to think about when designing combat, because it's not only damage, it's not only enemy. It's not only energy cost, it's also these more complex interactions where you can press a button and go invincible just for a moment. If you can time that, that means you can kind of avoid damage as well. Even if the move is expensive, or if it's cheap, then sure, I mean, props to you for using it, because that allows you to be more evasive as well.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah, phew.
Alright, so you can fight and combine 68 different abilities. How do you go about balancing the elements and also the enemies for this?
Oh boy.
Another rabbit hole?
No, well, I've kind of already been there, just talking about Crystal Element and the reason why it isn't absurdly broken in terms of how OP it is.
Okay, so go for a hole.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit similar in a sense, and it can also be explained in a more simple way. So, back when Glyde only had one ability, and I think the first special move that was added to the game was Blazing Impact, and enemies only had like one melee swing or something like that. So where do you go from there? What we did was doing this back and forth thing, and it was partly, at least from my perspective, inspired by what I did in Leaf Shift, where I add like a new feature to the character, to the main character, and whoops, because you add this new ability or feature, they suddenly become more powerful and can deal with the enemies, which might remain unchanged. And that way you can kind of see how much that new ability does to the game. And then you go and maybe add something to the enemies. And if you don't go in and balance for a while, you see this mismatch between enemies. Like either the enemies are crazy strong compared to your main character, or your main character will just steamroll all of the enemies. And this has been like a dance that has been going on, and the gap has become less and less the more abilities that Glyde has gotten and the more actions and AI improvements that the enemies have gotten. So yeah, it is kind of like a dance between enemies and the elements in that sense.
It's a balance.
Yeah, it's a balance, and lightning and fire came first in terms of their respective playability.
Right.
I feel like it was lightning element speed, I think, that created the foundation for combat in Glyde, as well as how heavy hitting Blazing Impact was. So I think we wanted these normal enemies to be pretty weak, but still able to take quite a few hits, because if they just died in 2 or 3 hits, you wouldn't be able to really do cool combos on them. But at the same time, we also wanted to make sure that they wouldn't be bullet sponges or the damage sponges, I guess. And Velafor and I, we discussed a lot about how the moves should be balanced, I mean.
Dealt me, yeah.
We kind of had, I think, because we are different people, we have different backgrounds in terms of how we perceive what's good and what's bad, both for the game and also Glyde as a character. Like, what makes Glyde good when he gets a new ability? What's good about the ability versus the enemies that are already there? And I like to look at things like I've already mentioned, like there is the damage, there is the knockback, there is the energy cost, and while energy cost and damage are very, very fundamental in how they work with the game, of course, if you have a move that deals very, very high damage, it's broken because it just instantly kills stuff, unless you apply cooldown, for example. And I think Velafor was also very much on board with this kind of balancing, that you have damage, you have energy cost, and you have cooldown. And as long as one of those were high, you could play around with the others to match that. And it also depended a lot on what type of ability was being added. For example, you have Lysandra's Blessing, that is a heal move. The reason why Glyde can't move while using Lysandra's Blessing should be pretty obvious.
Yes.
If you ask yourself that question, when you heal, you kind of undo the risk-reward situation that you have just engaged in, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
because when you engage an enemy, you take a risk that you can take damage, right? And you have to do something to mitigate that. You have to throw out your own moves, or you have to throw out a shield or something like that. Glyde doesn't have a block. He doesn't have the ability to block attacks. Like, he doesn't have a block button. And that's also something we discussed very early on, whether or not Glyde should have that, because the protagonist called Engineer in my game, in Operation Leaf Shift, he actually has a block button. So
your block button is basically a parrying. What is it called again?
No, it is actually a shield, like in Smash Brothers.
Oh,
you have
okay.
a perfect shield, and you have like a normal shield.
So there's a difference then.
Yeah, there is quite a difference there, and that also changes completely how you balance moves, because Glyde doesn't have the benefit of doing abilities out of a shield. That's now it gets very fighting game sketchy and specific. And in a short way to explain it is that if you're shielding, you're kind of safe from. If you walk up to an enemy and you shield, you're kind of safe for the most part, unless the enemy can break that shield easily. But let's say they can't. In that circumstance, you can just wait. Like, the enemy can't do anything to you when you shield, right? So you just wait, and then you punish them when their attack is over. And there you go, that's a risk-reward situation. You have a low risk and high reward.
Right.
And that, I think that mentality is something I have for every move that's in the game. And I try to look beyond, the damage, the energy cost, and the cooldown for that particular reason. Because that thing in itself, the shield in that instance, it didn't deal any damage, and the enemy's move, it didn't break the shield in this instance, but the shield was still extremely good in that exchange, I would say. Which brings me back to, the healing thing, because if you weren't shielding, you'd get hit and you'd take damage, but then you just run back and you press the heal button. If the enemy can't catch up to you, which most of the enemies in Glyde can't, because Glyde is generally faster than them, then you get a free undo button, so that what you do, the mistake you just made. So for that reason, you have a heal move where you can't move.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
There, you're playing defense. You're trying to do a lot of damage done, and you take hits, you take damage. You need to heal, but you can't just be immobile. You can't be invincible while you're healing. Makes total sense.
Exactly.
You can still be hit. You can still be killed.
Yeah, and you don't get the benefit of being able to run while you heal. So you have to position yourself not just in a good spot on the map, like in the level, but also a good spot, like in a temporal sense, like in between attacks, so you don't get hit, because then your heal gets interrupted, and that's a shame.
Yeah, and you don't get anything if that's the case.
Exactly. And this mentality has been something, at least I've tried to focus on a lot, even if it is a rabbit hole. Like, every ability, if you think about the risk-reward situation, and then you think about every different enemy in the game, that is a rabbit hole, like, for each and every ability. And that's why I have probably many thousands of hours in the training room.
Good gosh.
Yeah, I really like working with that kind of stuff, and I want to make sure that it feels good. So you don't have a move where you just press a button and it doesn't feel rewarding, or you press the button and you discover that all your other buttons, they don't matter anymore, because now you have the best button.
Yep.
That is something I wanted to avoid, and I think that's what we have managed to do.
Yes, agreed.
Pretty much. Yeah, because
Very balanced, very well balanced.
I can think of a move where I feel, or I have seen most of the community be like, this is the win button, and that's called Meteor.
Yes. Yep.
But am I right that Meteor is not insanely good?
The thing is,
Now that you
so Meteor is great. It takes a while for it to actually happen, but it follows the enemy.
Yes, but you told me earlier that you prefer just using nature stuff. Is there a reason why, as people might have expected,
Why people use?
is there a reason why you're not using Meteor all the time?
You know, I can't really explain because I used to use Meteor a lot because I was primarily fire.
What?
But I found
Exactly.
that nature was also very. So nature was you buffed up nature a little bit, and
Yeah, a little bit too much. Like in the next patch, it'll be a little nerfed again. Yeah.
I do agree that it's a little too much.
Yeah,
Because nature's supposed to be on the down low because you have the ability to heal.
exactly. Yeah.
It's supposed to be lower effectiveness than the other elements. That I agree.
Yeah. The thing is, while it does right now in the current patch, while it does have the ability to kind of eat up shields on the swordsman, it still doesn't deal all that much damage on its own.
It will do a lot of damage on a swordsman's shield, but it's always best to take the shield out first and then use a meteor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's the thing, and it might have just not been exaggerated enough. That nature, when you break a shield on a swordsman, you don't want to punish them with nature because it doesn't have the highest damage output. But yeah, it might have still been a little too strong. Is all. But yeah, back to the topic. Yeah, is there a reason why you switched from using nature, Meteor a lot to suddenly not really or not as often?
I honestly don't know. I never really thought about it until you just mentioned it.
Yeah.
I want to say that I just want to like explore other abilities, but I don't know if that's the answer. It's just
right, because if it is truly a win button, you would remember to use that, right?
I would be using it all the time.
Yeah, and I think that is very, very interesting because I was wondering just how good Meteor actually was, but the more that I also played and just tested in both the demo level and in the combat arenas, I feel more like it's Blazing Impact in Fire Element, and it's because you get those invincibility frames and the damage and the burn damage, but at the same time, it isn't really that strong on shield. So every elemental ability has kind of its downsides, and I actually have a hard time figuring out what ability is the best, and I don't think there might be an easy answer, at least in our little discussion here. So that's something I'm very curious to hear about from the community, especially when the demo is out and more people get to play. What everyone will end up saying, like, this move is the best in the game.
I don't know if it's possible, but if you guys, I have no idea if it's possible for you guys to put this in the actual like demo or anything like that. Maybe it might be a full game feature, but having a log on each element.
Oh yeah.
Time
yeah.
log.
Actually, yeah, I think we could actually do that. Now that you mention it, I'm just writing it down because it shouldn't actually be that difficult to implement. And also a counter so you can see how many times you use the different abilities. That would be cool.
A counter for each ability. That's a lot. That's a lot of work, but that would be really cool to have those stats there.
I feel like the whole risk-reward thing has helped a lot with balancing all the different moves. So you can think beyond just damage, energy, cost, and cooldown, because those are just numbers that you kind of put on there. But what the move actually does in gameplay goes way deeper. When you take into account, for example, with Blazing Impact or Stab Dash, Glyde has a trajectory he follows, which will reposition him, oftentimes in a better situation than before he used the move. He'll also be invincible for a short time, and the knockback on enemies might also launch them to a more preferred spot than previously. And all of that is like set in the move. So if you always find like a tiny benefit where you might have not expected one, then that move suddenly is a little better, and not just because of its default values like cooldown, energy, and damage output. if that makes sense.
Yes.
But I feel like it's the tiny things that makes the biggest differences in games like these. At least when you go deep and analyze the why the moves are either good or bad, because that's also something I've been pondering a lot. Is like, what's the worst move in the game, for example? And right now, I feel like it could be the aerial version of Life Siphon called Scattershot, but I'm not quite sure because it's pretty good against shields, at least the mage's shields, for example. So there are always a but in there for the different elements, and I think that's a good sign that even I don't really know what move is the best or what move is the worst. I literally have no idea.
And I like how some elements work better on certain enemies than others. You know, like you mentioned earlier, but the mages and stuff, fire mages versus the regular mages. You can use any element, but there's some that are going to be better.
Yes, some are just going to be better for different situations, and that is the core of the game. That is that situational awareness combined with your skill is what's going to make this game very, very fun to play.
Yes.
And yeah, when you mention that you have these benefits against, for example, mages or different enemy types, it's usually not always what you expect it to be. It can just be that one move launches enemies into a convenient spot for where you can follow up, for example. Like you did with Razorblade earlier. Razorblade just puts enemies in a place where you can keep comboing them, for example. So
Yep.
that's not in just the damage, the energy cost, or the cooldown, but it's like a side effect that's significant to the gameplay.
Yes.
Alright, yeah, I've been rambling enough about question 7.
Alright, question 8 is, did the Legend of Spyro have any significant impact on the combat for Glyde?
You already know the answer.
And we already know the answer.
And it is... no. Not really.
Which is very surprising, how close that everyone says that this game looks and feels a lot like the Legend of Spyro.
Yeah, and it's for the silliest of reasons ever, and that's, like we talked about earlier, that Valifor actually hasn't played The Legend of Spyro. So he started developing the game without looking at Legend of Spyro, like, at all. And when I got on board, it had been many years since I last played the games, and
It's been years since I have, too.
yeah, and I think I just looked to stuff like Devil May Cry more, and then it's just because we have a dragon character that it kind of moves automatically into looking like Legend of Spyro.
I think that's what... When I first saw this game, that's exactly what I thought. And when I first saw the features of this game, it's exactly what I thought. Now, after playing it for the past 6 months, I see it as... I can see where people think this is this has a lot of the Legend of Spyro series in it, but it really doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that now.
No, it plays way differently from the Legend of Spyro. I think the closest of the games would be Dawn of the Dragon, but it's still such a different perspective. It's like if you put Dawn of the Dragon's combat into Eternal Night or something like that, that would be the closest thing you could get. But since none of the games have that, it's, well, not really, yeah. Also in Dawn of the Dragon you can fly, and obviously Glyde can't. He can glide at the moment. But yeah, not really, no. There are a few things that... there are a few nuts to a Legend of Spyro, and it's mostly because I have played all the 3 games, and I really enjoyed them, and I kind of wanted to, you know, serve something for the community, because I feel like a lot of our fan community have played those 3 games and are in absolute love with them. Yep. Either that or they never played them and they only love the original trilogy. So, but there are many, I think, who are fans of The Legend of Spyro as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, maybe you will notice similar moves, animations, but that's mostly something I had like as a side thought when designing for the game and working on the different abilities and all.
It's more of a coincidence than anything.
Yeah, if there are other things than the tiny things I worked on, I talked with you about it. It's like less than 10 moves that have some form of inspiration, and it's like very. Most of the inspirations from Legend of Spyro are so tiny that they might as well not be from those games, I feel. Yeah, that's. I was going to say it before. Some people mentioned Comet Dash from Eternal Night and how Glyde has Blazing Impact, which seems a bit similar. But the way Blazing Impact works is just vastly different from the Comet Dash move from Eternal Night.
Oh yeah, completely.
And actually, Blazing Impact was not inspired by Spyro, but was inspired by Charizard's Flare Blitz from Smash Brothers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was chilling with my friend, and we were messing around with Charizard Dittos, like playing against each other with the same character, and I thought it would be cool if Glyde had Flare Blitz, and then I tried doing that, but it didn't feel right, so I changed it up some more, and then it became its own kind of thing. Because Charizard has like a bounce back when he hits someone with Flare Blitz, but Glyde just keeps going.
Keeps going.
He keeps going. So yeah, overall, there are a few tiny things that might have made their way into Glyde from A Legend of Spyro, but it has been the tiniest things that I just thought, hey, it would be funny if this little thing was similar or something like that. And then the rest of the focus has been on making, unique moves related to the elements, and also making sure that these elemental abilities had some kind of relevance to the story, which I can talk about. But yeah, mostly all the other kinds of things that are going to be important for the game. Those came first, and anything that's similar to The Legend of Spyro, at least from my part, has been secondary. And if it's from Velafor, like something he worked on, then it's just a pure coincidence.
Yeah.
Because,
He hasn't played it yet, so there's no link there.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like, just Glyde as a concept, and then the man himself never touched A Legend of Spyro until I made him do it.
You'll work on it more. Get him to play the rest.
Yeah, and for that, and for that reference, just so no one listening misunderstands, Velafor is only played the first game, but he hasn't beaten it yet. He only got to
Tall Plains.
Tall Plains, yeah, the grassy area in the game. So he still needs to beat 2.5 games before we can officially say that Velafor has beaten The Legend of Spyro.
Yes. Soon TM.
Soon TM. There's still quite a long time until that's said and done.
All right, so question 9. We're getting close to the end here.
Yeah.
What were the goals with the combat system you developed? Do you feel like you've achieved your goals?
Right. So this is one of the interesting ones, like the big questions, and some of this answer is probably gonna have to wait until the demo is out for everyone, because that will give more insight into all of it. But generally, I at least wanted to create a combat system which is fun and snappy and able to grow with time and the player's skill. I also wanted it to be focused on experimentation and curiosity, so players that experiment with the different abilities and go beyond just button mashing will find a lot more in the game. Though I still wanted it to be able to be played even if you don't know what you're doing. So if you're mashing buttons, sure, you'll be able to make some progress. You might not be able to beat every single thing in the game by button mashing,
but you're gonna feel like you're doing something.
Yeah, you're gonna feel like you're doing something, and you will actually be able to progress like somewhat through the demo maybe you will actually be able to beat it if you at least know how to dodge correctly. But that I feel like that comes with time as people play.
Yeah,
so if
of
they're
course.
button mashing, not knowing anything at the very beginning, they might still button mash, but maybe they have understood that dodging helps, so they button mash and they dodge. And hey,
I'm a good example of that because that's basically what I'm doing, and what I do now is that's how I started, and then I've kind of evolved to button mashing, but knowing what I should do in certain situations. Now I'm trying to learn. Okay,
Yes.
I'm trying to actually learn the right buttons for the right combos. So it's a process. Like I've all of my time is based off of button mashing, and I can do everything. I may not be a pro level or anything like that, but I can beat all the Blight Guardians. I can beat everything in the game. But now I need to work on that.
That's nice.
I need to work on that.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about this game is it's for anyone. You have one skill level.
Yeah.
You can do. You could be a total noob like me and still have fun, and there's still a way to progress all the way to that pro level gamer.
Yes, and that's also what makes it so replayable. Yeah, so the replayability element. That's both Valifor and I
huge.
just talked about this. We wanted to make sure that when people jump into this game, that even if they complete everything, they can come back and they can practice in training mode. They can do the bonus arenas and they can get better, and then they can play again. And then whoa, suddenly you're bullying all the enemies, and it's not because Glyde got stronger, but because you got better as a player.
That's huge in any kind of game, and that's hard to actually be able to get something like that where it's perfectly balanced for everyone.
Yeah, you really need to think about what goes into a combat system, especially when it's combat focused. I do feel that when the question mentions, do you feel like you have achieved your goals? There's one part of the combat thing that I feel, at least for the demo, is missing, and that's how it kind of interacts with platforming. It does have some stuff like Volcanic Wrath. It does have Zap Dash that can give you some more horizontal distance. But I feel like overall that we could do more to make it feel very, very tight with platforming as well. Because it is a 3D action platformer after all. So that's something I'm very, very intrigued to work with for the full game. To make sure that the platforming aspect also feels really tight and works with the different elements and the different abilities, and just making sure that it's like really smooth altogether. But yeah, the goals with the combat system would also include that, generally speaking, when you enter a fight with like zombies, it's low risk, low reward in general, but with some moves being exceptions to the rule. For example, if you try to use Stone Cleaver, you just walk up to a bunch of enemies and you try to use Stone Cleaver, it's not likely that you'll actually get it out before you get shot by an archer, or you get hit by a zombie, or you don't manage to charge it all the way, so you have to release it early, and then it doesn't deal all that much damage. But most of your other moves, you can kind of just throw them out, hope for the best, and then dodge, because you can cancel most of your moves with a dash or a dodge, which is the same thing in this game. And that also brings me over to the term Souls-like, which I didn't really talk about that much yet. Valifor is a big fan of Souls-like games, and just Dark Souls and Elden Ring and games where you press a button and you're kind of locked into that action until it finishes. And the Dark Souls series are just, notorious for being extremely difficult, and it is for that reason, because you can't undo when you press a button. You press a button, you swing your sword, you can't roll until you finish swinging the sword. And that is something that we talked about early on when working on Glyde, though it's just been very hard to make something like that work with a quadruped. So yeah, for Glyde, it's just been more like what felt natural, and at least to me, Glyde felt like he was a fast speedster, like a fast-moving character that kind of rushes around, dashing around, hitting and running, rather than committing to these overly heavy blows without being able to move out of the way. So naturally, I think that's just how the gameplay kind of progressed into leaning more towards Devil May Cry and hack and slash more so than a Souls-like game. But hey, it's probably also because the combat system comes from Operation Leaf Shift, which has this kind of fast-paced action. Though I think even then we could still do something like a Souls-like if we wanted to, but the community and fans of both Glyde now, but also A Legend of Spyro, or The Legend of Spyro. I keep saying A Legend for some reason, but yeah, people who have played those games, I don't think they're playing them for difficulty or the notorious, high risk, high reward playstyle or just gameplay, but more just the fun and the jumping around, exploring, and not dying because they got jumped from an enemy around the corner. Not saying that it's bad, Val, don't worry. But the combat just kind of evolved, and now there are still things where you can't just throw out the move and you'll get free reward, or there's no risk or something. There's still risk going into a battle, but you have to know what you're doing when you fight stronger foes. So even the low risk, low reward thing does turn out to be more high risk depending on the situation. Which brings me back to something I said earlier in this talk. It's very circumstantial, the combat system, and just combat and gameplay in Glyde is very, very circumstantial and very situational. If you have situational awareness and you know what to use in different situations, then hey, you'll get rewarded. But if you miss all of your attacks and you're wasting your energy and you're not timing your dodges correctly, you'll take damage, just like in games like Dark Souls. If you don't time your roll right, you'll get punished. Speaking of this difficulty thing, Glyde actually does take a while to die. He has a lot of health, but it can be depleted pretty quickly if you're not
not careful.
if you're not careful and you get yourself in a bad spot, I would say, then
I have been surrounded, and that health bar goes down quick.
Yes. Yeah. If you get surrounded, if you put yourself in a bad spot, and you don't have the energy, you don't have the resources, or you don't have the timing down to get out of that situation, then you'll die. And that's why Glyde will still probably be pretty challenging for new players, but hopefully it won't be like completely impossible, or the Souls of Dragon games. Souls, the Dark Souls of Spyro games or something like that. I mean, that's probably Eternal Night. I don't think this game is going to be harder than that by any means. It's probably going to be a lot easier. I feel like the difficulty of Glyde might lean somewhere between the first Legend of Spyro and the last one. It all depends. It also depends, where you come from as a player. If you've played fighting games, if you've played Smash Brothers, and you're somewhat good at it, you might be able to translate some of those skills into Glyde and just do better overall. And one thing I also wanted to mention for question 9 is that even if you're in a bad spot, you can always make a comeback. And that goes true for the Origin game as Operation Leaf Shift, where the combat system comes from, and also Glyde. That's something they also have in common.
Sweet.
You can always make a comeback if you just know what you're doing. Even if you have 1 health left. I think, wasn't that you at one point where you were playing a combat arena and you almost died and then you had like 1 health left?
I know that happened to me one time. I know that definitely did happen to me, and I managed to make, come back. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, like exactly. Even if you're down to your last health point, the game allows you to just be a bat
Dragon fruit.
and come right back and beat all the enemies up. Yeah, so cool.
Yeah.
And I feel like, yeah, because of that, I feel like that generally speaking, the combat system and what I set out to do for Glyde, I feel like I've kind of achieved my goals. There are a few things that I wanted to include, but either we didn't have time for it, or we didn't find a way to implement it where we both, Velafor and I, were happy with it. So maybe we'll see more stuff going on. I mean, we definitely will see more stuff going on in the full game with some of these ideas and expansions on the combat system.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right. We get to the last question here. Expectations versus reality.
Yeah, this is a little bit connected to question 9, but yeah, so this whole thing when you work on a combat system or just working on a game in general, you have your own expectations about how awesome this game is going to be, and you have all of these ideas for features, you have all of these ideas for different attacks Glyde's going to have, and just how awesome, generally speaking, it's going to be when Glyde or your main character puts them to use. But when you then actually make them in the game, you have physics, you have different collision things going on, you have bugs, you have all of these engine specific things going on, and you have even things that you might have programmed that you might not have been thinking about as side effects, because every time you make a new feature in a game, it's very likely that there's going to be some kind of side effect to it, and that is something that's part of your expectations versus reality thing as a developer. Very often the reality is going to be vastly different from your expectations. So you have to work really hard on making the reality actually meet your expectations, or you go and change your expectations. And I think that's something that has been happening a lot throughout the development cycle for Glyde, at least with the combat, where it's like we implement this new move and then we try it out and then it feels kind of bad, or it feels too powerful, or I'm trying to think of a good example here. I think Path of Ice is a good example, because both Velafor and I were, from what I recall, we were pretty excited about working with Ice Element, and we were talking about Path of Ice, where you create a path and you can walk on water and stuff like that, and also in combat you will be able to reactivate the move, and the third one is going to be stronger. And then I think don't quote me on this one, but I'm pretty sure Velafor and I had like a talk about, oh, now it's too strong because the last one did so much damage, and then we nerfed it, and we also nerfed the freezing a bit, so it didn't very easily freeze enemies as much as it could initially, and for that reason the move actually ended up being a little bit on the lacking side, at least from my perspective. And from what I've been able to tell, at least from Patreons playing the early access, it kind of rang a little true, because Ice Element has overall, from what I've seen at least, not been used all that much, and it might have been because some of the moves at least haven't been as useful as we might have expected. Though, on the other side of that, there is the argument that Fire and Lightning Element just work together so well that is the side effect. That might have been the reason why Ice Element wasn't used as much. I mean, there are probably many reasons, but I just feel like some moves like Path of Ice, when working on them, we had some kind of idea for them, and then either it worked out pretty well early on, and then later on when people try it out, it just, people either don't use them or they don't use them to the degree or in the way that we had expected them to. So
a lot of changes.
Yeah, there've been a lot of changes, but I feel like the majority of those haven't been to like a degree where it's been important or badly influencing the experience, I would say.
I think the biggest one that kind of, or maybe the biggest one, but the one that I noticed the most that was kind of a shock to you guys, is the people were pressing down on L3 and they're changed back to normal glide.
Right.
You guys didn't expect
that is yes. That one from just a gameplay perspective is that we didn't expect that people would so often press down on the left analog stick and then switch back to the base form, of course. So that is a good example, yeah. Path of Ice might be more on my theoretical side of things and thinking combat, but there are coming some changes to Ice Element, just tiny buffs to make it a little bit more enticing to use these moves and have them actually freeze enemies more consistently and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's probably one of my least used elements, is Ice.
Yeah, right? Yeah, Ice. I just never see anyone use Ice Element.
I use water more than Ice.
Yeah, and that too is something that when I was talking with Velafor before we put out the Patreon demo, I was like, people will use Fire Element and Lightning. Like we knew that, and then people will probably use Nature and Ice because they're on the first wheel. So those elements will be used the most. And no, whenever I watch people play, they do Fire, Nature, and never Crystal. Sometimes Water. Yeah, so Fire, Lightning, Nature, and Water for the most part. And then Crystal a little bit. But people still, I feel like it hasn't been long enough for people to actually use Crystal in the way that it's like intended yet. When people get better, I feel like they're going to be using Crystal maybe a bunch more like I am. It might be a natural transition. I'm just gonna make a prediction here that in the future people will be using Crystal Element a lot more and also be using Wind Vortex a lot more. But yeah, and also Earth Element because no one uses a Earth Element as well. But those were some of the expectations that weren't exactly matching reality when the Patreon demo got released. Right. But I would say those are still minor things in the grand scheme of the whole game. And overall, like I said in question 9, I would say that overall the combat system kind of matched what we set out to do. At least from my perspective, I feel like it's working pretty solidly, and I don't have any major changes I would like to do to it. It's like just watching people play now and see, oh, this thing is a little bit too strong, or oh, there's this bug here, or something like that, and then we just fix that.
Quality control.
It's
you got the
quality control, and it's for the most part tiny things with the combat at least. Obviously, like you said, there are the holes in the level. So
I love finding them.
I
I love just sending you guys those pictures, like, hey, look where I'm at, and you're like,
hey,
how?
Yeah. What is these? What is this hole? Where did you find it, man? What's going on?
No, I'm not going to get into detail for this show, but there's a certain area I've been trying for a very long time to get access to be able to get to it. Turns out it was so easy to get in there. And I sent the picture to Val and 1H, and they're like, what? How? How are you in there?
Magic. You're a wizard, Shaggy. But yeah, I think the system, the combat system, the gameplay flows together as it should, and any tiny things are bugs that you just can't really avoid when you're working only 2 developers on such a big game.
Big
So
demo.
that's just natural, yeah.
Demo, that's a game.
Big demo, yeah. Yeah, a demo that's a game
Yes.
at this point. Yeah, I think it's been a nice journey making this whole wombo combo system.
Wombo combo.
Yeah, wombo combo system gameplay. Yeah, it's cool, and I'm very curious to see more from the community. And
I am too.
You know, what kind of combos people will actually make, because now that I explained some basic ones, I think I'll hold myself back and not talk too much about combos and see what people actually brew up themselves. And then in the future, I did talk about before that I wanted to do combo videos on YouTube and maybe some combo tutorials to get people started. Right. But in the beginning, I want the community to be the ones that figure these things out.
Which ties into the bonus question: will there be a combo guide in the future? The answer is
no.
Not at all.
Not one in the game, at least. It will be a community-driven process, like I just explained.
Yep.
So hopefully people will make some combo guides themselves, and then you, listener, dear listener, whoever you are out there, you will be the one to judge whether those combo tutorials are nice for you.
Sweet. Well, 1H, this has been a great episode. Very informative, very detailed. I appreciate your time spending on this and coming up with the answers for these questions and the questions as well.
Yeah, phew. I'm not used to talking for this long, and maybe people listening will have noticed that. I usually go off rambling like this when it's like a very deep topic, but I tried at least to use words and explanations that might be somewhat, digestible. Hopefully,
I think so.
And if not, you can always listen to it again
And again.
or ask on Discord, or post some questions for the next episode.
Yes, please send us emails. We want emails to read on there. And we actually do have an email we still need to read. I apologize. It's just not everyone's here. I want everyone to be here for those questions, so we'll get to your email in a little bit. But also, while we're at it, while we're waiting, send us more.
Yes, give us all them good questions. I would be more than happy to answer stuff about the combat system at least.
Yes.
And all of these things like damage, knockback, hit lag, hit stun, counters, parries, dashing, dash canceling. There's a lot of stuff.
It sounds like stuff you can get in a whole nother episode just talking about that kind of stuff.
I could, but I think it might be a little bit too much at that point. Or maybe not. I don't know. If the community wants me to go really in depth, I could talk about it. But then again, some of the stuff is very specific and might be a little bit of a spoiler to, well, like I said, with the combat guide thing, then the whole episode would just be a combat guide at that point. But yeah, maybe
in the future.
In the future, yeah, I would like to elaborate more on the specific interactions with the elemental abilities, because, for example, when you use the Emerald Solace into Razorblade, that's something I was very much designing before the moves actually worked. It was like, it would be very cool if Glyde could set enemies down like a spike or a meteor smash, like from Smash Brothers. Something to just yeet an enemy down if they're up in the air. But if Glyde hits an enemy that's on the ground, they bounce up.
Just like a ball, just boom.
Actually the bounce happens either way, but yeah, generally just the idea of using a downward move to kind of slap an enemy against the ground that makes them bounce up. I love that concept. It's so cool. And then you can combo into whatever, because the enemy just lands, in front of you. All of these things, they have been carefully designed by yours truly to make a very awesome combo experience in Glyde. And then there are, of course, some interactions where I didn't ever think about it, and they just are possible things you can do because reasons and because, yeah, shenanigans, like diagonal zap dash.
Yes,
that is very cool.
That is cool. Speaking of emails, if you'd like to send us a question or feedback, you can email us at glydecast@gmail.com, and we'll discuss it in the next episode. If you want more information about Glyde, you can visit glydethedragon.com. We are also in Discord. Look for us in the official Glyde the Dragon Discord server. If you also want to support the game, you can also contribute through Patreon. Benefits include exclusive Discord privileges and early access with voting capabilities of the game content, as well as an NPC with your own custom name message. Don't forget to check out our other Dragon podcasters, World of Dragons podcast. Links for all this will be in the description. Also, a video version of the show will be on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and we will talk to you in the next one. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.